What if one of the most painful, chaotic events in your life, like, say, suddenly breaking your leg, wasn't just some random, terrible accident? What if it was actually a meticulously designed lesson, a lesson in self governance? Well, that's exactly what we're going to unpack today. We're diving into a unique framework that shows us how to transform raw suffering into some pretty profound structural wisdom. So here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll face the raw reality of the injury. Then, we'll introduce a really powerful metaphor to help us process it. After that, we'll walk through the exact 7-stage protocol for doing that. Then, we'll see what kind of lesson we can actually extract. And finally, we'll understand how this whole process can permanently upgrade the way we see the world. All right, let's start right where an experience like this begins, smack in the middle of chaos. When you suffer a serious injury, you're hit with this flood of unprocessed, totally overwhelming information. This initial state is nothing but raw data. It's a storm of pain, fear, confusion, you name it. The source material for this actually has a name for this state. It's called cognitive entropy. It's that feeling where your mind is just completely swamped by the sheer volume of negative input, and there's no clear structure or meaning to any of it. I mean, think about everything that comes flying at you. You've got the medical jargon, the procedures, the raw biological reality of pain, right? Then there are the waves of anxiety about your job, your future, and that deep, sinking feeling of helplessness. Now, all of these things are real. They are truthful descriptions of what's happening. But together, they form what this framework calls the husk. It's like the outer shell of the experience that actually hides the real substance inside. So, how in the world do we get past that tough, inedible husk? This is where the methodology introduces a really brilliant metaphor to help us reframe the entire event. And it all comes down to a pomegranate. The core idea here is that every experience, every piece of information is just like a pomegranate. It's got that outer peel, the pulp, and then the valuable juice inside. Now, our job isn't to try and eat the whole thing, peel and all. That would just lead to that cognitive entropy we talked about. No, our job is to apply pressure, to press it, so that we can extract the part that truly nourishes us. And this is where things get really interesting because it makes a critical distinction between two concepts, truthfulness or asidq and truth or al-haq. Look at the example. My leg is broken. It's a truthful statement. It absolutely is. It describes the physical reality, the apparition. But it's not the ultimate truth. The juice, the al-haq, is the higher level governance lesson that's hidden inside that event, like being able to see it and say, this is a calibration event. See the difference? Okay, so if we're going to press the experience, how do we actually do it? Well, the framework doesn't just leave us guessing. It gives us a very systematic 7-stage protocol for this whole cognitive extraction process. It's like a roadmap. Think of this whole thing like a refinery, but for your mind. It starts with tin. That's the raw, chaotic data of the accident. Stage 2, Salah, is all about pulling the core signal out of all that noise. Then comes Nutfa, and this is where you form that signal into a pure seed principle. In Alaka, you attach that seed to a larger framework of understanding. Mugda literally means chewing on the lesson, really processing it. Izam is where you build a new internal cognitive structure from it. And finally, Lam is when you operationalize the lesson, making it a real usable part of your life. Let's just zoom in on a really key stage here. Nutfa, the seed. This is that light bulb moment. This is where you pinpoint the core unchanging principle. So in the case of the broken leg, the seed truth is this massive realization that your essential self, your nafs, is the persistent operator, while your physical body, well, it's just a temporary, fragile instrument that you're using. And this is where the framework is just brilliant. It perfectly maps the physical reality onto the cognitive process. Think about it. Those long, frustrating months of healing are completely reframed. It's no longer just waiting around. It's an intentional processing delay. The system is forcing you to sit with your limitations, to chew on this lesson, and in doing so, you build a crucial capacity, patience, or sabr. Okay, so we've applied the 7-stage press. We've gone through the whole process. What is the actual juice we get at the end? What is this high-level governance lesson we've been talking about? Well, this table shows the upgrade in action. Your old view, the husk of your role, was, I am the owner of my body. The new view, the juice, is, my body is an instrument. My nafs is the operator. Look at authority. You used to think my willpower is in total control. The lesson? Your authority was forcibly ceded to the absolute governor. And dues, it shifts from my body is simply mine to recognizing my body as a trust and a mana that requires careful maintenance. It's a total cognitive shift. So here's the crucial point. The event was not meaningless. It wasn't random. It actually demonstrates a principle called moral causality. That physical hardship, the friction, was a deliberate mechanism used by the system to improve your internal structural integrity. It's kind of like stress testing a bridge to make it stronger. The pain actually had a purpose. So this all builds to the final and maybe most important goal. You see, this whole process isn't really just about learning from one broken leg. It's about permanently upgrading the very lens through which you see reality itself. The framework aims to upgrade what it calls your cognitive filter. The best way to think about this is like the operating system running in your head that renders your reality. And depending on the quality of your filter, the exact same crisis can show up as a catastrophic system bug or as an essential, built-in feature that was designed for your calibration. And this is probably the most powerful reframing of them all. With this upgraded filter, suffering is no longer a failure or a flaw in the system. Instead, you start to see it as a diagnostic port. A way for the system to plug in, run some tests, and perform critical maintenance to ensure your long-term growth and stability. Ultimately, the entire goal of resolving this friction, of pressing that pomegranate, is to increase your cognitive development score. By successfully extracting the lesson from the hardship, you produce what the sources call eternal essence, which is basically wisdom that becomes a permanent part of who you are, raising your whole capacity. And all of this leaves us with one final provocative thought. If we take this powerful metaphor and apply it to our own lives, if we look at our own hardships, our struggles, our painful memories, what husk is just sitting there waiting? What profound, nourishing juice is inside, ready to finally be extracted?